My son's bride called me low-class trash in front of 150 wedding guests. I'm Michael Brown, and I've been sober for 12 years while building a $22 million recovery empire. But this bride had no idea who she was messing with. What happened next exposed her entire wealthy California family as hired actors, costing $1,500 per day each. And when I dug deeper, I discovered something that would destroy her perfect wedding in the most ironic way possible. She'd been hiding prescription bottles in her purse, dozens of them, from 4 different doctors. The woman calling me damaged goods for overcoming addiction was secretly popping pills throughout her own engagement. When the truth came out, her fake family literally ran from the reception. Pills were scattered across the head table. My son took off his wedding ring and walked away. But that was just the beginning. What I found about her financial schemes had the FBI knocking on doors within 48 hours. You're about to hear how one cruel comment at a wedding reception unraveled the most elaborate fraud I've ever witnessed. If you're watching this, go ahead and hit subscribe. I have a feeling you'll want to see how this ends. Then please drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a recovering addict taught a pill-popping fraud the difference between real class and fake money. It began 6 months before the wedding, the first time Stephanie came to family dinner. I'll never forget walking into my son Tommy's apartment. Stephanie was sitting on his couch, and when I handed her the flowers I'd brought, she literally pulled her hand back like I might contaminate her. "Tommy didn't tell me you were coming," she said, not taking the bouquet. My son looked embarrassed. "Dad, this is Stephanie. Stephanie, this is my father." She gave me this tight smile. "Oh, the one with the, situation." The situation. That's what she called 12 years of sobriety. I set the flowers on the counter. "Nice to meet you too." But it wasn't nice. I could see her scanning my clothes. Clean jeans, button-down shirt, work boots. Nothing fancy, but nothing wrong either. Her expression said otherwise. "Tommy mentioned you work in construction?" "Recovery," I corrected. "I run recovery centers." She nodded like I'd said I collected garbage. "That's important work." The way she said important told me everything. This girl thought I was nobody. Over the next few months, the signs multiplied. When I visited Tommy's place, Stephanie would disappear into the bedroom with her purse, like I might steal something. When we went to dinner, she'd insist on separate checks. When I mentioned my business, she'd change the subject. But the worst part? She was changing my son. Tommy used to call me every Sunday. We'd talk about his job at the engineering firm, his 5 years of sobriety, life in general. After Stephanie, those calls became sporadic. When we did talk, he seemed distant. "Dad, maybe you could tone down the recovery stuff around her?" I was standing in my office at the New Hope Recovery Center in Scottsdale. Through the window, I could see clients walking to group therapy. Real people fighting real battles. Tone down the recovery stuff? She just thinks it's kind of heavy. Her family's more private about personal issues. Her family. That was another thing. 6 months of dating, and I'd never met them. They lived in California, she said. Old money, very exclusive, very busy. What kind of business is her family in? Investments, real estate. Stephanie doesn't like talking about it. She says it's gauche to discuss money. I hung up that day feeling smaller than I had in years. Here I was, running 8 recovery centers across Arizona, employing 200 people, helping thousands get clean. But to this girl and her mysterious family, I was just a former addict who got lucky. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at Tommy's place, helping him move furniture. Stephanie was in the kitchen on the phone with someone, her mother apparently. "No, Mother, you don't understand. His father has a past. Drug issues, I know, but what can I do? Tommy's already attached." She didn't know I could hear her. "Well, at least we don't have to socialize with him much after the wedding. I've made sure he's at table 12. In the back, near the service entrance." Table 12, near the service entrance. I'd been in recovery long enough to know when someone was trying to make me feel ashamed. But I'd also been in business long enough to know when someone was lying. Because here's the thing about Stephanie's family that never quite added up. If they were so wealthy and established, why had I never seen a single photo of them? Why did all their social media accounts look so new? And why, when I casually Googled their last name plus California real estate, did absolutely nothing come up? Most people would let it slide. Most people would sit at table 12 and keep their mouths shut. But most people haven't spent 12 years learning that staying silent about problems only makes them worse. It was time to do some digging. The rehearsal dinner was Friday night at Desert Ridge Country Club. $25,000 for the weekend, Tommy told me proudly. Stephanie's family was paying, of course. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, staring at the building. Through the windows, I could see elegantly dressed people mingling with champagne glasses. Stephanie's family had flown in that morning, all 6 of them. Mother, father, 2 aunts, an uncle, and a cousin. I'd finally get to meet the people who thought I belonged at table 12. But as I sat there, something my sponsor Jerry told me years ago came back. Michael, the worst thing about addiction isn't the drugs. It's letting people make you feel like you deserve less than respect. If I stayed quiet tonight, what message was I sending? To Tommy, that it was okay to let his future wife disrespect his father. To myself, that 12 years of sobriety and building a business meant nothing if the wrong person said so. To every client who walked through my recovery center doors, that shame never really goes away. The stakes weren't just personal anymore. I thought about Marcus, a 24-year-old who'd been clean for 6 months. He'd told me last week, "Mr. Brown, I'm scared my girlfriend's parents will find out about my past. What if they make her choose?" I'd told him what I always told clients. Your past is part of your story, not your whole story. Anyone who can't see your worth doesn't deserve your time. Now here I was, taking my own advice, or failing to. I pulled out my phone and looked at the text I'd received that afternoon from Dr. Sarah Williams, my business partner at the recovery centers. Sarah and I had built this empire together, her medical expertise, my lived experience. "Michael, you asked me to look into something discreetly. Call me. We need to talk." I'd asked Sarah for a favor 3 weeks ago, right after overhearing Stephanie's phone conversation. Sarah had connections in California from her residency at Stanford. I'd asked her to make some quiet inquiries about Stephanie's family. The fact that she was texting instead of calling meant she'd found something significant. But did I really want to know? Walking into that rehearsal dinner meant facing the consequences of my curiosity. If Sarah had found something damaging about Stephanie's family, I'd have to decide what to do with that information. I could ignore it, sit at table 12, let my son marry someone who looked down on me, pretend the last 12 years of rebuilding my life meant nothing. Or I could use whatever Sarah had found. Risk my relationship with Tommy. Risk looking like the bitter father who couldn't let his son be happy. But there was a third option I hadn't considered until that moment. What if this wasn't about me at all? What if Stephanie was hiding something that could hurt Tommy? What if her contempt for addicts wasn't just snobbery, but projection? I'd seen it before in group therapy. The loudest voices against addiction often came from people fighting their own demons. My phone buzzed. Tommy texting, "Dad, where are you? Dinner starts in 10 minutes. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, 51 years old, 12 years clean, 8 recovery centers, hundreds of employees, thousands of lives changed. But none of that mattered if I didn't stand up for it. I thought about my late wife, Maria. Cancer took her 9 years ago, but before she died, she made me promise something. Don't let anyone make you forget how far you've come. If Maria were here, she'd tell me to walk into that rehearsal dinner with my head high. She'd remind me that respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you command by living with dignity. The choice wasn't really about Stephanie anymore. It was about whether I believed my own recovery story. I called Sarah back. "Michael, thank God. Listen, you were right to be suspicious. Stephanie's family, they're not who they claim to be." "What do you mean?" "I mean they don't exist. Not the way she's described them. The real estate business, the old money, the California connections, it's all fabricated. My heart started pounding. Are you sure? I'm looking at casting agency contracts right now. Her entire family are actors, Michael. Professional actors hired for your son's wedding. The stakes had just changed completely. This wasn't about a snobbish future daughter-in-law anymore. This was about my son marrying someone who'd built their entire relationship on lies. And suddenly, Table 12 didn't seem so bad. It gave me the perfect vantage point to watch everything fall apart. I walked into that rehearsal dinner with Sarah's words echoing in my head. Professional actors, casting agency contracts. But I needed to be smart about this. Accusations without proof would make me look desperate. So I decided to test my theory. The first person I approached was Stephanie's father, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit. You must be Richard, I said, extending my hand. I'm Michael, Tommy's father. He smiled warmly. Wonderful to finally meet you. Stephanie's told us so much. I bet she has. So you're in real estate? Commercial development, mostly. California markets. Which areas specifically? A slight pause. Oh, various regions. Northern California, primarily. I nodded. My recovery centers work with a lot of commercial developers. Maybe we know some of the same people. What's your company called? Another pause. Longer this time. Hartwell Properties. We're fairly boutique. Hartwell Properties. I made a mental note to Google that later, though I suspected I wouldn't find much. And how long have you been in business? 23 years this fall. Interesting. Very specific number for someone who seemed nervous about details. I moved on to Stephanie's mother, an elegant woman dripping in jewelry that looked expensive but somehow new, like it hadn't been worn much. Margaret, right? Beautiful necklace. She touched it reflexively. Thank you. It's been in the family for generations. Really? It looks like Tiffany. Recent collection? Her smile faltered for just a moment. Oh, no, it's much older than that. European. My late wife loved jewelry. She had a good eye for provenance. May I? I leaned closer to examine the necklace, and there it was, a tiny Tiffany hallmark that anyone who'd spent time in jewelry stores would recognize. Recent, not vintage. Gorgeous piece, I said. Your family has excellent taste. The evening continued like this. Small conversations, gentle probing, watching for inconsistencies. Stephanie's uncle claimed to be a wine collector but mispronounced Bordeaux. Her aunt said she summered in the Hamptons, but didn't know which towns were actually in the Hamptons. The cousin claimed to have gone to Yale, but couldn't name a single residential college. But the real test came when I sat down next to Stephanie herself. Your family seems wonderful, I said. They are. Very accomplished. Your father mentioned Hartwell Properties. I looked them up on my phone. Interesting that there's no website. Stephanie's jaw tightened slightly. They're very private. Old school. Of course. And your mother's jewelry collection is impressive. Family heirlooms. That Tiffany necklace especially. The Celeste collection, right? Came out last year. Now her face went pale. It's not Tiffany. Oh, I'm sure it is. My wife used to drag me to Tiffany all the time. I recognize that setting. Stephanie stood up abruptly. Excuse me, I need to powder my nose. She was rattled. Good. But Tommy noticed our conversation from across the room. He came over looking concerned. Dad, is everything okay? You look like you're interrogating people. Just getting to know your future in-laws. Stephanie seemed upset. I looked at my son, really looked at him. 5 years sober, good job, happy, or at least he had been before this relationship started consuming him. Tommy, can I ask you something? How well do you actually know Stephanie's family? What do you mean? I mean, have you spent time with them? Visited their house? Met their friends? Tommy frowned. They're very busy and private. How did you meet Stephanie? At a conference. She was representing her family's foundation. What foundation? The Hartwell Foundation. They do charity work. Another mental note. I'd be researching that too. And you've never been to California to visit them? Stephanie prefers we keep our relationship separate from family business. She says it's cleaner that way. Cleaner or harder to verify. That's when Stephanie returned from the bathroom, and I could see she'd been making phone calls. She looked composed again, but there was something different in her eyes. She walked straight up to me. Michael, I think we should clear the air. About what? About your attitude toward my family. I don't have an attitude. I'm just curious about the people my son's marrying into. No, you're being suspicious. And frankly, it's inappropriate. Her voice was getting louder. Other guests were starting to notice. Suspicious of what? Of people who come from a different background than you. There it was, the class card. Different how? Educated, established, successful. You think I'm not successful? I think you're threatened by people who didn't have to claw their way up from nothing. The conversations around us were stopping. This was becoming a scene. Claw my way up from what, exactly? From addiction, from failure, from being the kind of person no respectable family wants around. Complete silence in the room now. Tommy stepped forward. Stephanie, that's enough. But she wasn't done. No, Tommy, this needs to be said. Your father clearly resents that my family has standards, that we don't think his past makes him qualified to judge us. Judge you how? By acting like we're somehow fake or suspicious just because we have class. I stayed calm. 12 years of recovery teaches you that angry responses usually prove the other person's point. I never said you were fake. You implied it? With your questions? Your skepticism? I asked about your father's business and your mother's jewelry. Normal conversation. Normal for someone looking for problems. She was breathing hard now, clearly agitated. And that's when I realized something important. Stephanie wasn't just acting defensive, she was acting guilty. The rehearsal dinner ended awkwardly after Stephanie's outburst. People tried to pretend nothing had happened, but you could feel the tension in every forced smile and stilted conversation. Tommy walked me to my truck, looking frustrated. Dad, what was that about? Your fiancée doesn't like being asked questions. She's just protective of her family. They value their privacy. I unlocked my truck door. Tommy, in 12 years of recovery, I've learned that people who get angry about simple questions usually have something to hide. Are you seriously psychoanalyzing my relationship right now? I'm trying to look out for my son. Tommy ran his hands through his hair. Dad, I know you mean well, but Stephanie's right. You've been different ever since she came into the picture. More suspicious, more judgmental, or more experienced. With what? I paused, choosing my words carefully. With people who aren't what they seem. Tommy stared at me for a long moment. Are you saying my fiancé is lying to me? I'm saying that in 24 hours, you're marrying someone whose family you've never visited, whose business you've never seen, whose friends you've never met. Doesn't that seem unusual? It seems private. Not everyone broadcasts their entire life. There's a difference between private and secretive. Tommy shook his head. I can't do this tonight, Dad. The wedding's tomorrow. Can we please just get through it without more drama? I hugged my son goodbye, but as I drove home, my phone kept buzzing with text messages. The first was from Dr. Sarah Williams. Michael, I have more information. Can you meet me early tomorrow, before the wedding? The second was from Frank Davis, a private investigator I'd worked with before, when we had theft issues at one of the recovery centers. Got your message. Very interesting case. Can we talk? The third was from Tommy. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. I love you. I just want everything to be perfect tomorrow. I sat in my driveway for a while, staring at those messages. Sarah had found something significant enough to want a face-to-face meeting. Frank had discovered something interesting, and my son wanted everything to be perfect for a wedding built on what I increasingly suspected were lies. I thought about calling the whole thing off, just showing up tomorrow, sitting at table 12, keeping my mouth shut. But then I remembered something from my early recovery days. My sponsor, Jerry, used to say, Michael, the difference between being clean and being in recovery is action. Clean is passive. Recovery is active. It means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I called Sarah back. Michael, thank God. Listen, I've been digging deeper into the Hartwell family situation. It's worse than I thought. How much worse? The casting agency has emails. Detailed instructions about family background, business history, even specific conversation topics to avoid. This isn't just hired actors for a wedding. This is a months-long performance. My stomach dropped. What kind of instructions? Things like, if asked about real estate specifics, redirect to wine or travel. And remember, the father doesn't discuss business details with outsiders. It's like a script, Michael. What else? The payments. Someone's been paying Prestige Acting Solutions $1,500 a day per actor for 3 months of preparation. That's not wedding weekend money. That's relationship money. I felt sick. Tommy had been dating these people, thinking they were his future family. Sarah, who's paying them? That's the thing. The payments come from an account registered to S. Morrison Financial Services. But when I looked up S. Morrison, it's a shell company. No physical address, no employees, no legitimate business activity. S. Morrison. Stephanie's last name was Morrison. So Stephanie's paying actors to pretend to be her family. For months, Michael, this isn't about impressing people at a wedding. This is about creating an entire false identity. I hung up and immediately called Frank Davis. Frank, please tell me you found something. Oh, I found something, all right. Your future daughter-in-law isn't just paying for fake family members. She's got some very real secrets of her own. What kind of secrets? The kind that involve 4 different doctors and a lot of prescription bottles. My blood went cold. Are you sure? Pharmacy records don't lie, Michael. She's been doctor shopping for 8 months. OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall. Classic pattern. So there it was. The girl who'd called me trash for being a former addict was currently using. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't about to destroy my son's life. Saturday arrived with perfect Arizona weather. Sunny, 75 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. The kind of day that makes you believe good things are supposed to happen. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie. The same black suit I'd worn to every important occasion for the past 5 years. The same one Stephanie had mocked as cheap and inappropriate for the social circles we move in. Today, it would have to do. Sarah had called at 7 that morning. Michael, I'm bringing everything to the wedding. Photos, contracts, financial records, pharmacy printouts, whatever you decide to do with this information's up to you. Frank had texted an hour later, additional evidence secured. We'll be at venue by 6 p.m. if needed. But the most important message came from Tommy at 8:30. Dad, I love you. Thank you for being here today. I know Stephanie and you got off on the wrong foot, but I really think you two will learn to appreciate each other. Appreciate each other, if only he knew. The ceremony was at 4 o'clock at Desert Ridge Country Club. I arrived early and found my assigned seat. Sure enough, table 12, in the back corner near the service entrance. Close enough to the kitchen that I could hear dishes clattering and servers talking. But you know what? Table 12 had an excellent view of the whole room. The other guests began arriving around 3:30. Stephanie's family entered together, dressed impeccably, and playing their roles perfectly. Her father greeted other guests with confident handshakes. Her mother air-kissed acquaintances with practiced elegance. They were good actors, I had to admit. But I noticed things other people missed, like how none of them seemed to know any of the other guests personally. They introduced themselves repeatedly to the same people, and when conversations moved beyond surface pleasantries, they had a remarkable ability to redirect topics. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Tommy looked handsome in his tuxedo, genuinely happy as he waited at the altar. Stephanie was stunning in a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, I stayed silent. This wasn't the time or place. Some battles require patience. But the reception, that was different. The reception was where people give toasts, where they speak publicly about the couple, their families, their future together, where lies become harder to maintain. Dinner was served at 7. I ate my chicken and watched the room, noting how Stephanie's family kept checking their phones, how they seemed more focused on their performances than the actual celebration. At 8 o'clock, the toast began. Tommy's best man spoke first, a sweet speech about friendship and finding the right person. Then Stephanie's father stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, when my daughter Stephanie first told us about Tommy, we knew she'd found someone special, the kind of young man any family would be proud to welcome. Polite applause. I wondered how many rehearsals that toast had taken. Our family has always valued integrity, hard work, and treating people with respect. We're delighted that Stephanie has found those qualities in Tommy. More applause. The irony was almost painful. But then Stephanie herself stood up for a toast, and everything changed. Thank you all for being here on our special day. Tommy and I are so grateful for your love and support. She paused, looking around the room with a smile that seemed forced. I especially want to thank both our families for their guidance in bringing us together. Marriage is about joining two families, not just two people. Her eyes found me across the room. Of course, not all families are the same. Some have histories they're proud of, others have complications they'd rather forget. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't typical wedding toast material. Tommy's father, for example, has overcome significant challenges in his past. Addiction, specifically. The room went completely quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Now, I want to be clear, we don't judge people for their mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance. But her tone suggested otherwise. However, there are certain standards that families like ours maintain. Certain expectations about the kind of people we associate with socially. Tommy looked mortified. He stood up. Stephanie, maybe we should... No, honey, this needs to be said. Your father has made some inappropriate comments about my family, questioning our background, our business, our legitimacy. She turned to look directly at me. So I want to make something crystal clear to everyone here. My family built their success through 3 generations of hard work, education, and ethical business practices. We didn't have to claw our way up from rock bottom because we never fell to rock bottom in the first place. The silence was deafening. We understand that not everyone has been so fortunate, and we're willing to overlook certain deficiencies for Tommy's sake, but we will not tolerate disrespect from people who should be grateful just to be included in civilized society. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from the effort it took to stay calm. She wasn't done. So while we welcome Tommy's father into our extended family, we hope he understands that there are boundaries, social boundaries, professional boundaries, and personal boundaries that people from our background simply cannot cross. She raised her champagne glass. To new beginnings, high standards, and the importance of knowing your place in the world. Half the room raised their glasses awkwardly. The other half sat in stunned silence. Tommy's face was bright red. Stephanie, sit down. Now. But the damage was done. She'd just publicly humiliated me in front of 150 people, using my recovery, the thing I was most proud of, as a weapon. That's when I saw Sarah Williams entered the reception hall through a side door. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. It was time. I stood up slowly, and the room turned to look at me. Stephanie was still standing, champagne glass in hand, looking triumphant. Stephanie, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. That was quite a speech. Thank you. Very revealing. Her smile faltered slightly. I'd like to propose a toast of my own, if you don't mind. Tommy shook his head frantically, but I was already walking toward the front of the room. Actually, I said, I'd like to toast your family, specifically your remarkable family business. Stephanie's father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But first, I think our guests would be interested in learning a little more about the people they're celebrating with tonight. I pulled out my phone. Dr. Williams, would you mind joining us? I believe you have some information that might interest everyone. Sarah walked to the front of the room, carrying a manila folder. The actors, because that's what they were, suddenly looked very nervous. And Stephanie? She'd gone completely pale. Dr. Sarah Williams walked to the front of the room with the confidence of someone who delivered difficult news to families for 20 years. She set her folder on the head table and looked out at the 150 guests. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Sarah Williams, Michael's business partner at New Hope Recovery Centers. Stephanie was still standing, champagne glass trembling in her hand. This is highly inappropriate. This is our wedding reception. You're absolutely right, I said. A wedding reception should be about celebrating the union of two families. So let's talk about families. Sarah opened her folder. 3 weeks ago, Michael asked me to do some research on Stephanie's family background. As a medical professional and business owner, I have access to certain databases and professional networks. Stephanie's father started to stand up. Now see here. Please sit down, Mr. Patterson, Sarah said calmly. The man froze. My name isn't Patterson. No, it's not. Your name is Robert Patterson, and you're a character actor represented by Prestige Acting Solutions in Los Angeles. A gasp went through the crowd. Sarah pulled out a photograph. This is your headshot from their website. You specialize in distinguished gentleman roles for corporate videos and dinner theater. She held up another photo. And this lovely woman isn't Margaret Hartwell. She's Linda Foster, also from Prestige Acting Solutions. Her specialty is elegant society matron. Characters. Stephanie's mother had gone white as a sheet. The entire Hartwell family, Sarah continued, are professional actors hired to play roles at this wedding. I have their contracts right here. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. $1,500 per day per actor for 3 months of preparation. Total cost, approximately $75,000. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Stephanie finally found her voice. This is insane. These people are lying. Am I? Sarah asked. She pulled out her phone. Mr. Patterson, sorry, Mr. Hartwell, what's your company's address in California? The man who'd been playing Stephanie's father looked around desperately. We don't give out business addresses to strangers. How about your company's phone number? Silence. Or the name of a single project your development company has completed? More silence. Sarah turned to the woman playing Stephanie's mother. Mrs. Hartwell, tell us about your family's jewelry collection, specifically that Tiffany necklace you're wearing. The woman's hand flew to her throat. It's not Tiffany. Sarah pulled out a receipt. According to this sales record, it was purchased from Tiffany Beverly Hills 3 days ago for $8,000, charged to a credit card registered to S. Morrison Financial Services. The room was buzzing now. Guests were pulling out their phones, probably Googling Prestige Acting Solutions and S. Morrison Financial Services. Tommy stood up, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. Stephanie, what is this? What's going on? Stephanie's composure was cracking. It's a misunderstanding. These people are confused. Am I confused about this? Sarah held up another document. This is an email thread between you and Prestige Acting Solutions dated 4 months ago. The subject line is Extended Family Portrayal Services. She began reading. Need 6 actors to portray wealthy California family members for important social events. Must be convincing in roles of parents, aunts, uncle, and cousin. Background story. Real estate development family, old money, very private about business details. The fake uncle, a man in his 50s who'd been charming everyone all evening, suddenly stood up and headed for the exit. Leaving so soon? I called after him. He kept walking. The fake cousin followed, then the fake aunts. Within minutes, 4 of Stephanie's 6 family members had fled the reception. Only the fake parents remained, looking like deer in headlights. This is impossible, Stephanie said, but her voice was shaking. You're making this up. That's when Frank Davis appeared at the back of the room. I'd texted him during Sarah's presentation. Frank, I called out. Perfect timing. Did you bring those pharmacy records we discussed? Frank walked forward, carrying his own folder. Stephanie Morrison, I'm Frank Davis, licensed private investigator. I've been researching your background for the past week. You have no right. Actually, I do. Prescription drug databases are part of public health monitoring, and you've been very busy. He opened his folder. 4 different doctors, 7 different pharmacies, 8 months of prescription shopping. Frank began reading from a list. Dr. Martinez at Phoenix Pain Management, 60 OxyContin, prescribed for chronic back pain. Dr. Stevens at Scottsdale Family Medicine, 40 Percocet, prescribed for dental surgery recovery. Dr. Thompson at... Stop! Stephanie screamed. Just stop! But Frank continued. Dr. Wilson at Mesa Medical Center, 90 Adderall, prescribed for adult ADHD. Interesting thing about that one, you filled it at 3 different pharmacies in the same week. The room was dead silent except for Stephanie's heavy breathing. The total? Frank looked up. 180 pills in the past 2 months alone. That's not medication, that's abuse. Tommy sank into his chair, his head in his hands. So let me understand this, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. The woman who just gave a speech about families with standards, who called me damaged goods for being a former addict, who said I should be grateful just to be included in civilized society, that woman is currently using prescription drugs illegally while paying actors to pretend to be her family. Stephanie was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. I needed them. The pressure, the planning, everything had to be perfect. Perfect? I walked closer to her. You built your entire relationship with my son on lies. You've been high for most of the courtship, and you just humiliated me for overcoming the exact same disease you're suffering from right now. It's not the same, she whispered. You're right. It's not the same. I got help. I got clean. I built a life helping other people recover. You hired actors and stole pills. Tommy finally looked up. Stephanie, is this true? All of it? She couldn't speak. She just stood there, tears ruining her makeup, her perfect wedding dress suddenly looking like a costume. The wedding's off, Tommy said quietly. Tommy, please. The wedding is off, he repeated louder this time. Everyone, I'm sorry, but there's not going to be a marriage today. Stephanie's remaining fake parents, the actors, chose that moment to make their exit, practically running for the door. The real guests sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to leave or stay or start taking pictures. The reception hall had become a circus. Guests were whispering frantically, some taking photos, others calling relatives to report the drama. The wedding coordinator was trying to figure out what to do with the cake, the band, the flowers, but I wasn't done yet. Stephanie, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, before everyone leaves, I think there's one more thing our guests should know. She looked up at me through tears and smeared mascara. Please, haven't you done enough? Frank, I called to the private investigator, that other information you mentioned about the prescription fraud investigation? Frank nodded grimly. The Arizona State Board of Pharmacy has been tracking unusual prescription patterns for 8 months. Your name flagged their system 3 weeks ago. Stephanie's face went chalk white. What does that mean? Tommy asked. It means, Frank explained, that obtaining controlled substances through deception, using multiple doctors, or filling prescriptions at multiple pharmacies to avoid detection are all felonies under Arizona law. Felonies? Stephanie whispered. Class 4 felonies, specifically, punishable by up to 3 years in prison. The remaining wedding guests were riveted now. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a criminal matter unfolding in real time. Dr. Sarah Williams stepped forward. Stephanie, as a medical professional, I'm required to report suspected prescription drug abuse to the appropriate authorities, especially when it involves illegal procurement methods. You can't do this to me, Stephanie said, but her voice was breaking. My career, my reputation. Your career? I interrupted. What career? You mean the fake charity work you claim to do for your family's fake foundation? Sarah pulled out another document. The Hartwell Foundation doesn't exist either. The website was created 6 months ago using stock photos and plagiarized content from legitimate charities. Even your supposed job is fake, Frank added. There's no record of employment anywhere. No tax returns showing legitimate income. The only money in your accounts comes from credit card advances and a personal loan you took out using fraudulent financial statements. Tommy stood up slowly, his face a mixture of heartbreak and anger. So nothing was real? Nothing at all? Stephanie reached for him. Tommy, please, I can explain. Explain what? His voice was getting louder. That you've been lying to me for 8 months? That you're addicted to pills? That you hired actors to pretend to be your family? That you're facing felony charges? I was going to get help, she sobbed. After the wedding, I was going to get clean. Like you were going to tell me about your fake family? I was scared. I thought if you knew the truth... The truth? Tommy was shouting now. The truth is you're exactly what you accused my father of being, except he got help and built something real. You just built more lies. That's when Stephanie's purse, which had been sitting on the head table, suddenly tipped over. Pills scattered across the white tablecloth, dozens of them. OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall, exactly as Frank had described. The symbolism was perfect. All her secrets spilling out in front of everyone. Several guests gasped. Someone took a photo. The wedding coordinator looked like she might faint. Jesus Christ, Stephanie, Tommy said, staring at the pills. You brought drugs to our wedding? I needed them. The stress, the anxiety. You needed them because you're an addict, I said quietly. Just like I was. But instead of getting help, you decided to attack me for being honest about my disease. Pastor Mark Johnson, who'd been standing quietly near the altar, stepped forward. Stephanie, I think you need help. Real help. Not a wedding, not more lies, but actual treatment. I don't need treatment, she said, but she was already gathering up the pills with shaking hands. I need everyone to mind their own business. This became everyone's business when you made that toast, I replied. When you publicly humiliated me for being in recovery while secretly using yourself. Dr. Williams approached Stephanie gently. I run an intervention program at Phoenix General. We can get you into treatment tonight if you're willing. I'm not going anywhere, Stephanie snapped, stuffing pills back into her purse. This is my wedding day. No, Tommy said firmly. This was going to be our wedding day. Now it's the day I found out I don't know you at all. He pulled off his wedding ring and set it on the table next to the scattered pills. Tommy, wait! But he was already walking away, and this time he didn't look back. Frank Davis approached Stephanie with a business card. I've already filed my report with the State Pharmacy Board. You'll probably be hearing from investigators within 48 hours. You need a lawyer. And you need treatment, Dr. Williams added, before this gets worse. Stephanie looked around the room at the 150 guests who'd just witnessed her complete downfall. Some were already leaving. Others were still taking pictures. A few were Googling prescription drug fraud penalties on their phones. This is all your fault, she said to me, her voice venomous. If you'd just minded your own business. If I'd minded my own business, I interrupted, my son would have married someone living a lie. Someone who's sick and refuses to admit it. Someone who thinks the solution to addiction is to attack other addicts. I walked over to where Tommy was standing by the exit, looking shell-shocked. Son, I'm sorry this happened, but I'm not sorry you found out the truth. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Dad, how did you know? 12 years of recovery teaches you to recognize the signs. The anger, the defensiveness, the projection. She was accusing me of everything she was guilty of herself. Tommy hugged me then, really hugged me, for the first time in months. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let her treat you that way. You don't need to apologize for caring about someone, even when they don't deserve it. Behind us, Stephanie was arguing with the wedding coordinator about refunds. The fake parents had long since disappeared. The pills were still scattered on the head table like evidence at a crime scene. It was the most expensive lesson in truth I'd ever witnessed. The aftermath of the wedding that wasn't spread faster than wildfire in our small recovery community. By Sunday morning, my phone was buzzing with calls from clients, colleagues, and friends who'd heard what happened. Word travels fast when someone publicly attacks addiction recovery and then gets exposed as an active user. Dr. Williams called first. Michael, I wanted you to know, Stephanie checked herself into Desert Haven Treatment Center last night. Good. That's the right choice. It is, but I also wanted to tell you that 3 of our current clients called me yesterday. They heard about what happened and wanted to share their own stories about family members who judged their recovery. That was the part I hadn't expected. The ripple effect. Marcus, the 24-year-old I'd been working with, left a voicemail. Mr. Brown, I heard what happened at your son's wedding. I just wanted to say thank you for standing up for all of us. My girlfriend's parents have been giving me grief about my past, and seeing how you handled it gives me courage to set my own boundaries. 3 other clients called with similar messages. Suddenly, this wasn't just about my family drama. It had become a teaching moment for people struggling with shame and stigma. Tommy came to see me Sunday afternoon. He looked exhausted, but clearer somehow, like a fog had lifted. Dad, I need to ask you something. How long did you know? I made us coffee and sat down across from him at my kitchen table. I suspected for weeks. But I didn't have proof until Sarah's investigation confirmed it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? He was quiet for a long moment. Probably not. I had to let you see it for yourself. Otherwise, I would have been the bitter father trying to sabotage his son's happiness. I feel like such an idiot. 8 months of my life wasted on someone who was lying about everything. Not wasted, I said. You learned something important about yourself, about what you're willing to accept and what you're not. Tommy nodded slowly. She's going to be in treatment for 30 days minimum. Her lawyer called this morning. Apparently, the pharmacy board investigation is moving forward regardless. Good. Actions have consequences. For all of us. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him the local news website. The headline read, Recovery Center Owner Exposes Wedding Fraud. Bride's Prescription Drug Abuse. Someone at the wedding was a journalist, I explained. The story's gone viral on social media. Tommy's eyes widened. Is that bad for business? Actually, no. We've had 12 calls since yesterday from people asking about our programs. Apparently, seeing someone stand up for recovery values resonates with families dealing with addiction. But there were other consequences, too. Monday morning, Frank Davis called with an update. Michael, thought you should know. The FBI is looking into S. Morrison Financial Services. Turns out Stephanie's fake company was used for more than just paying actors. What do you mean? Money laundering, possibly. She was funneling cash through multiple accounts to hide the source of her funds. The wedding fraud might be the least of her problems. That afternoon, Dr. Bedshide. William stopped by my office with more news. The actors are cooperating with investigators. Apparently, Stephanie hired them for more than just your son's wedding. She's been using fake family members for business meetings, social events, even job interviews for the past year. How is that possible? She's been living in a complete fantasy. The deeper we dig, the more elaborate the deception becomes. But perhaps the most significant consequence came Wednesday, when Pastor Mark Johnson called. Michael, I've been thinking about what happened at the wedding. Would you be willing to speak at our community addiction forum next month? About what? About standing up to stigma, about not letting shame define your recovery. We have a lot of families dealing with these issues. That's when I realized the real impact of what had happened. It wasn't just about exposing one person's lies. It was about refusing to accept that recovery makes you somehow less worthy of respect. Thursday brought a call from the Arizona Department of Health Services. Mr. Brown, we understand you were instrumental in identifying a case of prescription drug fraud. We'd like to discuss having your recovery centers participate in our new monitoring program. By Friday, 3 other recovery center owners had reached out wanting to know how we'd handled the situation. Apparently, addiction shaming by family members was more common than I'd realized. The most surprising consequence came Saturday morning when Stephanie's real mother called. Mr. Brown, this is Patricia Morrison, Stephanie's actual mother. I live in Ohio. I wanted to apologize for my daughter's behavior and thank you for getting her into treatment. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Stephanie's been lying to us for over a year. We thought she was doing well in Arizona, working for a charity, dating a nice young man. We had no idea about the pills, the fake family, any of it. She paused. We've been trying to get her help for years, but she kept insisting she was fine. Maybe now she'll finally accept that she needs recovery. It turned out the most important consequence wasn't punishment. It was the possibility of healing. 3 months later, I was sitting in my office when Tommy knocked on the door. Dad, got a minute? He looked different, lighter somehow, like he'd been carrying a weight he'd finally set down. Always. How are you doing? Better. I started going to Al-Anon meetings, learning about enabling, codependency, all that stuff. I smiled. How's that going? Hard, but good. I'm realizing I ignored a lot of red flags because I wanted to believe Stephanie was who she claimed to be. Tommy sat down across from my desk. I also wanted to tell you something. Stephanie's been in treatment for 90 days now. She's doing the work, apparently. Her counselor says she's finally being honest about her addiction. That's good news. She wrote me a letter, apologizing for everything. She asked if I'd consider giving her another chance when she gets out. I kept my expression neutral. What did you tell her? That I appreciate the apology, but I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship that was built on lies. How do you feel about that decision? Sad, but clear. I deserve someone who tells me the truth, even when it's difficult. We sat quietly for a moment. Dad, I owe you an apology too, for not believing you, for letting her disrespect you, for asking you to tone down your recovery. You don't owe me anything, Tommy. You were trying to make a relationship work. That's not a character flaw. But I should have stood up for you sooner. Maybe, but you stood up for me when it mattered most. Tommy nodded. I've been thinking about what you said that night, about the difference between private and secretive. I want to make sure I never ignore that distinction again. Good. That's wisdom earned the hard way. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Dad? I'm proud of how you handled everything. You could have destroyed her publicly, but you just told the truth and let people draw their own conclusions. After he left, I sat there thinking about boundaries, about the difference between shame and accountability, about how recovery isn't just about getting clean, it's about learning to live with dignity. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my 24-year-old client. Mr. Brown set boundaries with girlfriend's family. They respect my recovery now. Thank you for showing us how. 12 years ago, I thought recovery was about not using drugs. Now I know it's about not accepting less than you deserve. If you're watching this and struggling with addiction stigma from family or friends, remember, your past doesn't define your worth. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of getting help. And if you're in recovery yourself, please share your story in the comments. The more we speak up, the less power shame has over any of us. Thank you for listening.